What I do to attract investors is just like the other business, I try and add value. And I do that by educating. How can I educate people maybe on the risks that are out there, how to find the right sponsorship group, how do you spot their underwriting to make sure they're being conservative? How do you, what questions do you ask? I created a 40 question checklist a while back on my website of what questions to ask a sponsor. Don't ask them all, but here's a sampling, right?
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Chad Schieler. Chad is a driven, accomplished real estate investor and syndicator in the Indiana market. Prior to real estate, he spent 17 years in the electronic payment industry. Chad, I'm going to stop there and say first, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate you taking the time out to come and share your story.
Thanks, man. This has been awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. And let's start there. Let's start just kind of let people know your background. Sounds like you didn't start in real estate, which I think is actually a fairly common theme. A lot of us don't. But maybe talk about your background and then kind of what brought you into real estate space.
Yeah, I knew for years I want to get into it. I had my uncle, like grandpa, and other friends that were in real estate for a long time. And I chose the sales route for about 17 years. From West Lafayette, Indiana, born and raised there, Purdue area. Moved to Indianapolis when I was 19 years old, was in retail management for several years, and then started back in 2007, selling credit card processing services, did really well at that. Learned how to, develop sales skills, how to build value, add value to people's lives, have a mindset shift from a sales perspective to how can I add value to your life. It really helped me a lot in that business. But, that was more of it was a great business to be in. It really was. It was residual. It was a relationship business. So a lot of those skills actually carried through into investor relations with real estate. So they both kind of go hand in hand. I think back in 2011, I knew I wanted to get into real estate, and I kept setting a goal every year that I wanted to buy a first property. This is like 12 years ago. And it never happened until 3 years ago. And every year I kept doing that. I'm like, what is happening here? So 2017, 18, I started reading a lot of books and podcasts, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, rabbit hole, right? That's where it just explodes from there. And just talked to a lot of people, a lot of coffees and, meetings and more books. And then finally I started looking at properties and, I'm an overanalyzer by mistake, by fault. I'm an analysis paralysis. My wife would even tell you that. So it's one of my qualities, but it's one of my faults as well. So I looked at a lot of properties and finally found this fourplex. I got outbid on it, and I kept getting outbid again and again and again. And then finally one morning, this popped on the market at fourplex, and I'm like, I'm going to get this thing no matter what. And I offered on the property $10,000 over asking, sight unseen, no inspection, it was fully vacant, and I'm like, what am I doing here? And of course, I got the deal, of course, right? And gave him 2 hours to respond. I was like, yep, you can have it, fine. So got the deal. I'm like, all right, well, I might have lost $30,000 here and make a mistake on my first property, but it's worth the experience I'll get. It's worth it to me. I want to get started. Because we all know that no one ever buys one deal and stops. No one ever does, right? You get one, get the second one, the third one. So actually ended up being a really good deal. And after like 18 months, I doubled my money, 18 months. So it was a great deal. But in between that point in time, I got then more experience, more comfortable with that whole real estate game, bought a 15 unit, bought a 20 unit, 25 unit, and just kind of went from there. And today we're about 3 years into it, newish compared to other guys out there. We're at 140 right now, 140 units. We'll be at probably 180 in a couple months here. And we have a good little scaling goal for ourselves. So that's my story.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, I think, commonalities, people getting going in real estate, and I think, but like important, especially to people that are listening and maybe trying to get started out. One, I think, you mentioned you set that goal to buy a property and kind of kept putting it off and having analysis paralysis. And that's normal. Like that's, I feel like that's what a lot of people go through. You can spend a lot of time having it be
a goal or some vision in the future, and really it speaks to the value of taking action, which is, you know, kind of ultimately when you started putting in offers, that's what happened. And you had to put in multiple offers, you know. As an investor, you know, when you're looking at a property as an investor versus, say, someone who's like buying their, you know, forever home, right? You have a different set of criteria. And so especially if you're you know, into analyzing, it's probably gonna, they're not all gonna look right, they're not all gonna pencil, they're not all gonna, you know, feel like a good deal. And then and I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably wouldn't advocate that everyone just go in and be offering 10,000 over just to get a
Not
deal.
today.
Yeah, not today. And it that was kind of the second part of my point, is I'm sure, you know, the market helped that. But the reality is what I really liked about what you said is that, hey, I if I lose $30,000, like, or, you know, I have $30,000 in here to learn to do the process. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of because actually doing it is what's going to teach you the most. You know, sometimes you do take a risk to get going, and then, you know, the a lot of times the first deal excuse me, the first deal that you do might not be a deal that you would do, you know, kind of 5 years down the line. You know, our criteria change and things like that. So
Oh, yeah.
I love the idea of just like, hey, I'm doing this. It's going to happen one way or the other, and get going. What are some of the lessons that you learned from that deal? Like, once you got it, you know, kind of, and it sounds like it was very successful. You were able to, you know, make money on it in a short period of time. But what sort of things was this a value add? What were you doing to kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
that deal run?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a huge value add. It was light cosmetic upgrades. I put about 25K in, maybe 20K into it to just redo some paint and flooring, you know, find some tenants. But I had a professional third party management company do the work. That was the agreement between me and my wife. I couldn't manage myself. And it taught me a lot of lessons. So I think lessons I learned were, number one, get an inspection. Number one, that was like a huge no-no. But that inspection a year ago from the prior sale, I'm like, oh, that'll work fine. A year old, that's not a problem at all.
Nothing
So
changes in
I'm
a
really
year.
bad. Yeah, and my realtor's like, oh yeah, it's fine, no problem at all.
Yeah,
So
great, great
I mean,
advice.
I know, right? So I mean, he's a great guy. Don't fault him at all. But I mean, we had a heat pump go out. Actually, two of them in the first 6 months. So had I got an inspection, we would have probably caught that. You know, the roof had some issues. It was kind of caving in a little bit, not like major, but just need to be opened up ventilation wise. I learned that management companies, you got to pick the right one. You know, with the fourplex, you don't have many options, honestly, and you're not going to get a big multifamily management company to manage it for you. So it's really kind of like a mom pop type PM company. And I learned that, you know, when you're at that level, that lower unit count, you're just not going to get the best service and best quality, you know, because there's not a lot of money in that deal for them. So we had problems leasing up. We had longer vacancies. I just had communication problems here and there, and I think what made me actually sell the property was I then had about 80 units on my belt after that property was bought. So I'm like, this 4 unit is like wasting all my time. I need to get rid of this thing, get off my plate, and kind of move full cycle deal, you know. So we had one unit that was trying to get leased for probably a month or 2 months, and I'm like, you know what, let's just sell it. So I talked to them about it. I'm like, hey, I'm going to sell the property. How does this whole process work? And they're like, well, per our agreement, if you want to sell this property, then we have to be the agent or the broker selling the property for you. I'm like, wait a second. This is not what I signed up for. I've got a broker myself who I bought the property through. He's going to sell it for me. I'm like, well, if that's going to happen, you put it on market. Well, you got to just, we aren't managing it for you. We're going to walk off the day one. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I called my buddy up. I'm like, look, you have 30 days to sell this thing off market. Go. On the 28th day, he sold it for what we wanted.
Yeah. That's good. That's
Good
good.
lesson there. Yeah, read your PM agreement for sure.
Right. Right. That definitely some lessons there. And your point about the property management groups, it's not to disparage any of them. It's really, though, probably a big reason why a lot of people, as you start to scale, you realize that's a huge component of it, right? Because you're not self-managing, a 100 and something unit apart. Like as you get more and more units, it gets harder and harder to do it yourself, and so you're bringing in third-party management. But the quality of the management, it really goes up with the number of units, because as you said, they're gonna make a lot more money. It's the amount of time for the amount of money generated that ratio starts to change quite a bit as you get, I guess people say 100 units, some people say 150 units, but as you get, sort of bigger and bigger, now you have on-site staff, you have on-site leasing people, on-site maintenance, that kind of thing, that are going to really change the picture of how that property presents, and when someone comes to lease it. So it helps with the tenant base that's there, and it helps with leasing to have the ability to have people on site. And so when you have a 4-unit or even a 10-unit or something like that, you're very unlikely to have anyone on site. And so it's a matter of, they've got to call phone numbers, set up a tour, or maybe there isn't even a tour to do. It's just kind of like, hey, we have this unit coming available, that kind of thing. So I think that's one of the big reasons why people who get into multifamily or come from single family to multifamily, however it goes, that scaling is a lot based on the management side of things.
Yep.
As you've scaled, you kind of doing bigger and bigger. Is it all around Indiana? Is that all local to you?
Yeah. I mean, like most real estate guys, they kind of get your teeth cut on the tertiary markets. The small stuff. It's easier to get into it, right? Lower basis. You learn your lessons, all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, we've got all of our properties are within about an hour and 20 minutes of Indianapolis right now, and now our most recent deals are getting a little more concentrated and better, stronger MSA, stronger markets with more population, more job growth. And that's the eventual goal of our company.
Yeah. And are you buying these all like yourself? Or are you syndicating? How are you structuring your deals?
Yeah, good question. So the first 4 I did myself. Then I chose to do, one with a partner as a JV. The next one we did as a syndication. So 2 partners of mine, we teamed up, 3 of us did a syndication, fourth quarter last year. That was our first one. And then I did my latest syndication with myself with Focus Capital with my own investors.
And how have you found that transition? What are you doing to kind of attract passive investors? I mean, fourth quarter of last year now, I mean, it admittedly throughout the market, it's actually a hard time or harder than it was at least, a couple of years ago, to raise capital. So how are you finding that process? What do you think? What are you doing to attract passive investors?
Well, let me touch on something you said first about it's hard to raise capital right now. So I actually think I may have made a mistake, but I don't regret it. I didn't raise capital until 8 months ago. I never did, because I was in the mindset, I want to make my own mistakes first with my own money.
Yeah.
Not use investors' money. That was just that's my path that I chose to be on. So I don't really know how easy it was 2 years ago. I have no knowledge of that.
Right.
So what I know right now is how it is. So for me, it's just normal. So my thought is I keep hearing this. So now maybe in a couple of years when it gets easier, I'm going to have great experience in the hardest time we've ever had, right?
Yep.
So to answer your question, what I do to attract investors is I, just like the other business, I try and add value. And I do that by educating. How can I educate people maybe on the risks that are out there, how to find the right sponsorship group? How do you spot their underwriting to make sure they're being conservative? How do you, what questions do you ask? I created a 40 question checklist a while back on my website of what questions to ask a sponsor. Don't ask them all, but here's a sampling, right? But I want to be real with people, show them what I'm doing, talk to people that know, like, and trust me, and just be an educator, just try and engage with them and educate them on real estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love what you said there, that you didn't know any different, in the sense that you started at a what is considered a hard time. And I think that's something, I mean, I didn't start much before you in terms of capital raising. And so I was talking to this very topic of one of my mentors, and she was like, well, you kind of, you're in this at the best and the worst time, because it's going to be hard, right? It's hard in a lot of, not just capital raising, it's hard right now in real estate in a lot of capacities, but at the same time, you're going to learn how to do these things better than maybe someone who was doing it, 3 years ago when we were in this really hot market and everybody wanted to get into syndication. So it's kind of, you can either look at it as, you can be defeated by it and think, oh, this is just too hard, or you can sort of say, all right, well, I'm learning all the lessons now, and when things shift, in a few years, we're in another up market. Well, now you've established yourself as someone who is providing value, is that educator, is kind of had to put in the extra work to you may not have known that it was the extra work, but had to put in the extra work to make things work right now. And so I think that's it's actually sometimes hard times create good opportunity sort of in the future. So I think that's
create good people too.
Right.
Hard times create good people. Like when your back's up against the wall, the fighters, they fight through it and they make it happen. Yeah. Other people just kind of fold over, and I think right now we're actually in one of the best times to be in real estate, because while some operators had it really easy a few years ago, and let's be honest, you could be blindfolded and run a property and make money, for maybe 18 to 21, you could have, right. It's so easy. You had, anyways, how it goes. But I think right now, certain operators are gonna have a hard time with their properties if they underwrote aggressively, if we weren't well capitalized, if they placed wrong debt without a rate cap on the property. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're going to be in a better position, not being one of those operators, to where we can raise capital easier, whereas other ones maybe are having capital calls and so forth. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was, and this is not, I don't want people to think like we're disparaging people who made money in a good market. Like, good for you. That's great. But the point is, right now, we have to work harder. We have to work harder because we should always be putting our investors first. If you're syndicating, investors come first. And it was easy to make them a lot of money, a few years ago. Now you got to work harder for that. You got to do things like you mentioned. You got to do things. You have to sort of dial in operations. You have to be very careful about the debt. You have to do all of this and function at an even higher level. And so you could just, I guess, give up and not care about this. But that's the people that are working harder and putting in the extra reps right now. That's who, in the long run, who investors are going to trust. I mean, and that's ultimately, that's the whole point, right? You build investor trust by performing for them. Don't tell me, show me, right? It's just the way it is. So I think it's a really great point that you bring up. And I think it is, there are a lot of upsides to a difficult market. There's a lot less competition. The deals that come out, there's a lot less competition for them. You're going to have to, by default, become a better operator. You're going to have to, by default, learn more of the intricacies of debt. I mean, there's just a lot to it that if you want to survive and you want to do right by your investors, all of that has to be a part of it. So I just love that point. You mentioned that you have bigger goals. How do you see things going forward for you and your company? Kind of what's the outlook?
Yeah. So right now we're growing our team. So 2023 is what I've kind of earmarked as the year of operational excellence. I think a lot of companies are as well, but this is our chance to really refine our processes, our systems, our foundation. I'm actually going to be kind of overstaffing our company because I see what lies ahead. I still have opportunity in the next 12 to 18 months, and we're going to capitalize on it. We're not going to be sitting here in 12 months from now and be like, oh, wait, let's start hiring right now. So right now we've got an analyst, we've got a virtual assistant, a local admin, and we're hiring for a director of operations, asset manager role. And then after that, we'll be hiring for an analyst, a deal funding kind of a guy. The next 3 years, I would say we're going to grow our revenue by at least 8 times.
Great. Those are great goals. The concept of sort of building that team to be ready to take advantage of opportunities, I completely agree. I mean, that's if you're waiting until everybody knows that the opportunities are there, then they're not opportunities anymore. Now you've sort of missed that. I was actually just listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about how after the recession in 2008, it wasn't until basically 2 years later that everybody knew what the bottom of the market was. So it was like bottom was in 2008, and it was in 2010 was when, you know, people started to realize, oh, I guess we're beyond that. And I don't know if some of that's fear-based or what, but the people that kind of took advantage and kept going, you know, with solid and sound fundamentals, really did well through that. You know, people that were prepared to take advantage of those opportunities and recognize them as opportunities, you know, is kind of I think that's what you're sort of talking about now, is preparing for that sort of next bull market.
Yeah, and there's some groups right now that are, you know, pencils down. I hear from brokers all the time, and we're offering everything we can. We put in 3 offers last week. Yeah. So we're still aggressive, because at the end of the day, like, there's still, the dollar is still being devalued. Whole different discussion, right? So, but still, you've got a hard asset. You're buying today's money, debt at today's money. It's going to grow. So, anyways, it's still a great investment in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's, you know, you make offers. Maybe you're not making an offer at what they're suggesting, you know, what the whisper price is, what the pricing guidance, but you do your underwriting, you stay conservative, you stick to your fundamentals, and you write an offer. And the reality is they can take it, they might not take it, but that can happen in any market. And so as long as you're still sticking with what works and what is going to be beneficial to yourself and your investors, there's no reason not to still be looking at, you know, the deals that are available. It's just not, deal flow is just lower, but that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities.
Yeah, I tell my team, like, the best way you can manage your progress is what's your personal KPIs, like what's your personal activity. You can measure how many deals you put an offer on. You can measure that, right? So we have a goal every month of how many deals we're going to put an offer on, and it's a numbers game, right? You might have to put an offer on 10 deals before you get one, but oh well, if you don't put offers on a deal, you're not going to get one of those.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. If the answer is always no if you don't ask. So
exactly. I love that.
Well, and
it's all shots you don't take.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. You talk to the brokers, and it's like, I've had them say it. Well, you know, they'll say, here's the pricing guidance, you underwrite. I'm like, look, I'm nowhere close to that, you know, and they're like, well, put in an offer, because I think that they recognize that, you know, maybe that the pricing, you know, the pricing guidance is probably based on what the seller wants to get, but what it's actually worth and what they'll sell it for, probably somewhere in the middle. So it is of value to sort of continue the business forward and be proactive, and just as long as you're sticking to your fundamentals, there's no reason to, you know, sort of think real estate's dead or something like that. It's just not the case. Well, Chad, let me switch gears. I want to get to ask you the questions I ask every guest. And the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So I always ask everyone, what is your why? What's driving you? You're obviously, you had a successful career. You've moved into real estate. You're having success there. But what keeps pushing you forward? Sounds like you have big goals. So what's the driver there?
Yeah, you know, my driver, it's pretty simple. It's my wife and my daughter. It's my family. And just to provide a great life for them, for us three, to where we can have financial freedom and we can have our time back. I think financial freedom and time freedom are both two different things. And they're very important, because there's a limited amount of time in this world and every day. Everyone has the same amount of time. And if if you make a lot of money but have no time, what good is that, honestly? It's not good at all. So there's two strategies here. You know, to provide a great life, I want to get my time back eventually, which right now I've got a pretty good balance. But also I want to have full full control and security over my, financial future, which real estate is what I've determined to be that path for me. The other business that I still have today, actually, that's other income stream, but it was a great income stream, but I don't have full ownership over that. And while I'm invested in that in the portfolio, I still get payments. Like it's not guaranteed. Whereas real estate's, it's a hard asset. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to zero. And I think it's a better path for me. And it's what drives me every day. I work harder at this than I've ever worked in anything else in my life. It's something I'm very passionate about, and that's my why, my family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said about, sort of the time freedom and financial freedom. They're not the same thing. They can go hand in hand, certainly, but there's plenty of people out there that, make a lot of money, but they give up all their time to do that. And I think, at the end of the day, that's not better. It's not, you want to, I want to anyway. I value experiences and time with my family, with people I love. Like I enjoy what I do, but it's at the end of the day, it's all with the focus of, sort of swapping that or turning that ratio of money and time, where, time has become more and more important, and it's figuring out ways to make the money work for you. That's why we invest. That's why we do real estate. That's why we talk to investors, because it's, even as a passive investor, you can have your earned income, and then you can invest it, and over time gradually, sort of change the ratio of where your money comes from without reducing the amount of money. And now, you're increasing your amount of time. So it's kind of, it takes some time to build that up, but that's the ultimate goal, is to have, sort of time and financial freedom be tied together.
I want to touch on that real quick here, because you made a great point about when that ratio starts to change, like where your money comes from, whether it's, one stream to four streams of income. And then when you start to get in that substantial passive income to where it's your other source of income, like it's funny, it's like a mindset shift for me. It happened to me, last year. And I'm like, I felt this huge sense of like security and just like peace. Like I wasn't reliant on one revenue anymore. Like I had something of my own going, and it was like making money. It was cash, like real money.
Right.
And so I keep on snowballing, compounding. Like this is amazing, right? So it's just as that keeps going forward, I can only imagine like when it now surpasses the other income, and that's just going to have to be a great feeling,
Yeah. Yeah. You hear about it, people, when they reach that point where their passive income gets greater than whatever their W-2 or their, it's earned income. And it's, I don't like, keep working. If people want to keep working, that's fine. You probably do, especially in the beginning, as you're growing your wealth, you do need some sort of income to get invested. It's sort of, that sort of, you make it, invest it, and then grow it. But it's just kind of, that's what you're looking for. That's what you're working towards. That's why we get so passionate about real estate and talking about sort of these opportunities to people, is because at the end of the day, you're trying to change the ratio of time for money, so that it's kind of the other way around. And yeah, it's just it's a great feeling as you progress towards it. Second question for you, Chad. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, anything that just to let listeners know you a little bit better.
I mean, okay, my family jokes. I'm like, there's like multiple Chads, apparently. There's like, you've got woodworking Chad, I can build stuff in a wood shop. You've got wakeboard Chad, you've got kiteboarding Chad, you've got surfing Chad. So anyways, I love water sports. I love all that stuff. We went to Hawaii last February as a family for a whole month. Next year, we're going for 3 months. So in terms of time freedom, that's something we love to do, is have experiences. But I like water sports. That's my jam.
Yeah, me too. What part of Hawaii do you have a favorite island, or what's your?
Yeah, Oahu. Yeah, Kailua.
Yeah, very nice, very nice.
A lot of hikes.
I think we're going in December. We have tentative plans to go to Hawaii. My wife and that's where we our honeymoon was Hawaii. We've been there with one of our kids. Our second kid hasn't been, but yeah, it's a kind of a favorite place to visit. So I don't think I don't think we're unique in that. People love going to Hawaii. It's beautiful. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best place?
Yeah, either our website, focusedcapital.com, or my email, chad@focusedcapital.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. Final question for you. What piece of advice would you give to someone who's looking to get started in real estate? They hear your story, they want to follow in your footsteps. What would you tell them to kind of get them going?
I would tell them to hire a coach probably out of the gate. If you can't afford one, find a mentor, someone else that's done it. Find a way to offer them, add value to their life, or do some work for them in exchange for advice. I didn't hire a real estate coach until I was a year and a half into it. And I'm like, wow, I missed a whole lot of stuff in a year and a half. And when I hired that coach, like, things changed instantly. So I would say get a coach, but I would say just get started, man. Like, you got to go get your property, go find one that cash flows, this cash positive, but just go do it. The worst thing is like not making a decision. So it's all about taking action. Like you said, Jason, just take action, go do it. Once you get your first deal done under your belt, you're going to learn a lot of stuff from that first deal, and it's going to keep compounding.
Yeah, no, super important. And I think I've had a couple of different real estate mentors. It's helped me a lot. It helps with that. It just shortens the learning curve, right? It's just, you can figure it out, but it's going to be easier. You're going to avoid mistakes. You're going to have, kind of a faster road to success with mentorship. But at the end of the day, you've got to take action. You've got to put those teachings into use, right? It's not good enough just to have a mentor. You have to be willing to do the work and kind of rise to the level that they're sort of teaching you to be at. So I think that's great advice. Well, listen, Chad, this is really great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you're sharing with myself and the listeners. It's been really great talking to you. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And folks listening, I know you're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more fantastic guests like Chad. And thank you all for listening.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.